You're standing in your kitchen late at night, the light over the sink still on, phone in your hand. You typed a message. You erased it. You typed it again. Your heart is racing, not because you don't know what to say, but because you know exactly what will happen if you do. This is the moment everything changes, even though it doesn't feel powerful yet. I'll explain why this exact moment matters later, and I'll also explain why the silence you're afraid of is about to become your greatest strength. Stay with me. You've been taught that love means effort, that care means showing up again and again, even when you're tired, even when you're not met halfway. And because you're empathetic, because you feel deeply, you've carried that belief further than most. But there's something you're only starting to realize. Not all effort creates connection. Some effort slowly erases you. I'll come back to how this happens psychologically, but first you need to understand why this phase feels so uncomfortable. Silence feels wrong to you because you associate it with abandonment. When you don't reach out, when you don't check in, when you don't fix the tension, your body reacts like something dangerous is happening. Your chest tightens, your mind looks for reasons. You tell yourself you're being cold or cruel or that you're going to lose them forever. But silence isn't absence. Silence is containment. It holds your energy in instead of leaking it out. That's why no contact feels hard but powerful. It forces you to sit with your own worth without external reassurance. You're not used to that. You're used to regulating the relationship with your effort. When something feels off, you move closer. You explain. You chase clarity. But chasing doesn't create security. It shifts the balance. The one who chases is always reacting. The one who waits is choosing. And position matters more than intention. When you chase, even with love, you lower your position because you communicate that your peace depends on their response. That's not love. That's anxiety dressed as care. Here's a line I want you to remember. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. Let that land. When you step back, you don't create loss, you remove distortion. You see what remains when you stop holding everything together. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. That's why silence feels so exposing. It removes the role you've been playing. You may think if you stop reaching out, everything will collapse. But ask yourself something honestly. Has everything been held together because it was strong or because you were holding it? That question matters more than you realize. I'll explain later how this affects the other person's perception of you. But for now, focus on what it does inside you. When you stop chasing, something strange happens. The nervous energy has nowhere to go. You feel restless. You feel the urge to explain yourself. You feel guilt for choosing space. This is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a sign you're breaking an old pattern. Your system was trained to equate love with movement. Silence feels like danger because stillness was never modeled as safe. But stillness is where self-respect grows. Chasing keeps you busy. Silence makes you honest. And honesty can be uncomfortable when you've been ignoring your own needs for a long time. You start noticing how often you compromised, how often you waited, how often you accepted less than you gave. This awareness hurts, but it also restores your dignity. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. You're not becoming less loving, you're becoming more truthful. There's another reason chasing lowers your position, and this one is subtle. When you chase, you take responsibility for the emotional climate of the relationship. You manage moods. You soften conflicts. You make sure things don't fall apart. That teaches the other person they don't have to show up fully. They get to be passive while you stay alert. Over time, this dynamic drains you and dulls attraction, not because you're not enough, but because equality was never established. Silence interrupts that dynamic. It creates a pause. And in that pause, roles or question has to breathe on its own. That's why silence is powerful. It's not manipulation, it's withdrawal of overfunctioning. It's you stepping out of a role you were never meant to play alone. You might worry that stepping back makes you replaceable, but chasing already did that. When you're always available, always accommodating, your presence becomes predictable. Predictability doesn't inspire care. It invites complacency. Silence reintroduces mystery, but more importantly, it reintroduces you to yourself. Right now, you're learning to tolerate the discomfort of not fixing, not explaining, not reaching. That discomfort is the price of self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of any healthy connection. Without it, love turns into endurance. With it, love becomes mutual. You don't need to announce this change. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to threaten distance. You simply create it and you hold it. That holding is new for you. It will feel awkward at first. But each time you resist the urge to chase, something settles inside your body. You stand a little straighter. You breathe a little deeper. You remember who you were before you started bending. This is not about punishing anyone. It's about stopping the quiet punishment you've been giving yourself. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. And what it reveals will guide your next steps. In the next part, I'll explain what actually shifts in the other person's mind when you stop reaching out, and how this silence changes the emotional power dynamic in ways you may not expect. For now, let yourself stay here. Let the silence work. You don't need to rush the truth. It's already moving toward you. When you step back, it can feel like you're doing nothing. But psychologically, you're doing something very specific. You're interrupting a loop. Human behavior is shaped by patterns of response. When you always reach out, always repair, always initiate, the other person's nervous system adapts to that rhythm. They don't have to check in with themselves. They don't have to wonder. They don't have to feel the gap. Stepping back removes the automatic comfort they relied on. That's not cruelty, that's reality. The psychology of stepping back is about restoring balance. When you pause your effort, the system recalibrates. Your absence creates contrast. Before, your presence was constant, so it faded into the background. Now there's space, and space activates awareness. The mind notices what it no longer receives. This is when questions begin to form on the other side. Where did you go? Why are things quiet? What changed? Not because you demanded attention, but because you stopped supplying reassurance for free. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. When you were chasing, they didn't have to choose you. You were already there. Choice only becomes visible when something is no longer guaranteed. This is one of the hardest truths for empathetic people to accept. You want to believe that consistency alone creates closeness, but closeness without choice becomes obligation. Stepping back returns choice to the relationship. Here's what often changes in their mind when you stop reaching out. At first, there may be relief. The pressure is gone. The responsibility feels lighter. Don't panic at this stage. Relief is not clarity. It's just the absence of expectation. Then something else happens. The silence stretches. And in that stretch, they either lean in or lean away. If they lean in, it's because your absence revealed value. If they lean away, it's because your effort was the only thing sustaining connection. Either outcome gives you truth. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. This is why silence is honest. It doesn't argue. It doesn't persuade. It doesn't beg. It simply shows what remains when you stop trying to be enough for two people. The mind responds to loss differently than it responds to pressure. When you chase, they felt pursued. When you step back, they feel the absence. Absence invites reflection. Pressure invites resistance. Now let's talk about the urge to text or call, because this is where most people break their own boundary. The urge is not about love. It's about regulation. You feel discomfort and you want relief. Contact promises relief, but it's short-lived. The moment you send the message, your nervous system spikes again. You wait, you check, you interpret. This keeps you trapped in reaction. To handle the urge, you need to slow the moment down. When the urge hits, don't argue with it. Name it. Say to yourself, this is anxiety, not intuition. Then give your body something else to do for 10 minutes. Walk, wash your face, write the message in your notes instead of sending it. Most urges peak and fall like a wave. If you don't act immediately, the wave passes. You're not denying yourself connection. You're delaying a reaction that doesn't serve you. Another practical step is to create a rule before the emotion hits. Decide that you will not reach out when you feel dysregulated, only when you feel calm. This protects your dignity. Calm communication comes from choice. Anxious communication comes from fear. One builds respect. The other erodes it. Distance reveals what effort was hiding, including how often you acted from fear instead of self-trust. You should also limit the ways you check for them. No scrolling through old messages. No re-rating conversations. No checking their online status. These behaviors reopen the loop you're trying to close. Every time you check, you tell your brain the threat is still present. Stepping back means stepping back mentally, not just physically. So what do you focus on daily instead of chasing? You focus on what brings you back into your body and out of their orbit. Structure your days around things that require your presence. Work that challenges you. Movement that grounds you. Conversations where you're seen without performing. When your life has weight, you don't need to pull meaning from one person's response. You also focus on rebuilding your internal reference point. Ask yourself each morning, what would someone who respects themselves do today? Then do one small thing in alignment with that answer. It might be saying no. It might be resting. It might be finishing something you've been avoiding. These actions seem small, but they accumulate. They remind you that your life is not on hold waiting for permission. There's a quiet shift that happens when you do this consistently. You stop monitoring. You stop calculating. You stop wondering how you're being perceived. Your energy returns to you, and ironically, this is often when you become most noticeable. Not because you tried, but because you're no longer leaking yourself outward. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. It reveals whether connection was mutual or maintained. It reveals whether interest was real or convenient. It also reveals your own strength. You learn that you can survive the quiet, that you don't collapse when you're not chosen immediately. This is a profound reorientation for someone who has been defined by emotional availability. You may still have moments of doubt. That's normal. Growth doesn't erase longing. It contextualizes it. When doubt comes, return to the truth that chasing never gave you the peace you were hoping for. Silence is not a void. It's a mirror. And what it reflects will guide what happens next. In the next part, we'll talk about what to do if they step forward and what to do if they don't. Both paths require strength, but one doesn't require self-abandonment. For now, keep holding the line. The work you're doing in this space matters more than you think. If they come back, this is where your growth is tested, not by how much they say it, but by how you respond. When someone returns after silence, the old impulse is to rush to over-explain to prove you're safe again. Resist that. Coming back does not mean things reset. It means a new conversation begins. You move at a pace that protects your nervous system. You listen more than you reassure. You let consistency speak before promises. Boundaries are not punishments. They are the structure that allows connection to exist without self-betrayal. Set standards quietly. You don't need a speech. Standards are shown through what you allow and what you don't. If they want access to you, it comes with presence, honesty, and effort that matches your own. If they push for the old dynamic, the one where you carried the emotional weight, you slow things down. You don't argue, you don't convince. You observe. A grounded, "this pace works for me" is enough. Anyone who respects you will adapt. Anyone who doesn't will reveal themselves quickly. Remember, this distance reveals what effort was hiding. If they return with clarity, accountability, and steady action, you can meet that with openness. If they return with confusion, excuses, or urgency to bypass the work, you don't need to close your heart, but you do need to keep your footing. You're no longer auditioning for love. You are evaluating alignment. Now, if they don't come back, this is not a failure. This is information. Silence reveals truth either way. If nothing reaches for you when you stop reaching out, then the connection depended on your effort to survive. That truth hurts, but it also frees you. Closure is not something they give you. It's something you allow yourself when you stop waiting for a different ending. Dignity in this moment looks like not rewriting history to make it hurt less. It looks like accepting what was real and what was missing. You don't need to villainize them. You don't need to romanticize them. You simply acknowledge that the relationship could not meet you where you now stand. That's not bitterness. That's maturity. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means integrating. You take what you learned about your patterns, your boundaries, your capacity for attachment, and you apply it differently. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy. You stop over giving to earn security. You choose connections that feel mutual, not consuming. This is how the empath evolves without hardening. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. It also reveals who you are when you're no longer performing. In the quiet, you discover that your worth doesn't fluctuate based on someone else's attention. You become more selective, more embodied, less reactive. This is not detachment from love. It's attachment to self. Here's the fast summary. Silence is not a tactic. It's a truth teller. If they come back with respect, you respond with boundaries, pace, and standards. If they don't, you choose closure, dignity, and forward motion. Chasing kept you anxious. Stepping back gave you clarity. And clarity is always kinder than hope without evidence. One clear action step now. Decide today what behavior earns access to you. Write it down. Not what you want to say to them, but what you require to feel safe and respected. Then commit to honoring that list, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. This is how trust with yourself is rebuilt. Distance reveals what effort was hiding. Let that truth guide you instead of fear. You don't need to disappear to be powerful. You just need to stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else close. Stay calm. Stay present. Stay aligned. Your self-respect is the relationship that will carry you forward. And when you're ready, watch the next video where we talk about how an empath's energy shifts when they finally stop over-explaining and start living from quiet certainty.